Hi, this is an acrylic painting demo, and I'm your host, Evelyn Sprouse-Froh. I will be painting an acrylic painting, and it will be a floral in an abstract realist style. This style is something that I feel like I have kind of coined over the years, in that I like to paint something that looks realistic in a sense, but with a lot of abandonment and a lot of color and movement and big shapes and bright colors. So we're going to start here with a 8x10 piece of watercolor paper, and I usually use one brush, even in the smaller pieces like this. I use a 1-inch flat brush. I do a loose and sort of rustic style. I don't draw first, not usually. I mean, you can, if that helps you. Feel free to go ahead and draw first. I use the bright colors that feel good to me in the moment. I like to use warm colors and real bold color. But my palette consists of about 5 warm colors today and 2 cool colors. I have an ultramarine blue and an aqua for my cool colors, and lots of white on the palette. We can get lots of variation in the values by mixing with white. I've got a red, a lemon yellow, orange, burnt sienna, and yellow ochre. First of all, I'm going to wet my brush. Now, this is a little different than working with watercolor. We're going to be using straight from the tube, and I will use some water to move the paint, but the more direct and thick you can put the paint on, I think the most painterly effect you will achieve. I like to say that I paint motion and energy more than I paint the subject. But of course, we're looking today at a photograph, and the photograph is tulips. Now we're just going to really draw inspiration from the photo. Yes, some of the traits, characteristics of the tulip that are in the photo are helpful for us to be able to get an idea of where we're going, but we don't want to adhere strictly to the photo. So starting with a wet brush, I'm going to take up some of the red that I have on my palette, and I'm going to just drop a little water and mix a rather thick but yet some watery looking red. I want to sort of exaggerate color. I don't see a lot of orange in this photograph, but I do feel like I want to see more orange in my red. This red that I'm putting on right now is pretty strong, and I'm just going to lay in some real quick brushwork, sort of picking up the big shape that I see and actually just enjoying the redness I see here, and thinking of a tulip. Now I want it to be energetic, and to create energy, I often capitalize on the diagonals. There's a diagonal beginning to develop already. I don't want something centered, so I'm going to pull some other red flowers just around the focal point in a way that will sort of be unique. I'm thinking a lot as I plan this, and at the same time be willing to sort of experiment. Again, I'm not literally copying the photograph, but I am trying to maintain the shape that I see. And this diagonal that's been created, I don't want it to be too overpowering. So maybe I will balance it here and make it interesting. Now, that's blocking in big shapes and major shapes, you might say. This is a lot of what's going on in the photograph. There's red elements, which are flowers, but we're trying to capture that beautiful feeling that we get when we look at a field of red tulips. I always like using blue or some sort of blue in the background. This particular photo has sort of a sandy dirt background in the upper part. But blue is something that I feel like the aqua blue that I have on my palette, blended with just a little tiny bit of the red that's on my brush, gives a kind of an interesting grayish tone to the aqua. And I want to see that. I'm painting by feeling comfortable playing with the colors that are on my palette. This idea of the blue in the background sort of represents some of a sky, maybe, some light that we can represent the light with a blue in the background, and blue is a cool color and will recede, whereas the bright red and the orange and yellow will come forward. Now, the other major shapes in our in the composition, the major shapes are the leaf and stems that we see. I'm mixing ultramarine with the lemon yellow, and I'm getting a nice green, and I'm going to just really get some of that green in, keeping in mind the shapes of the stems and streaking the yellow from one side of my brush, maybe using yellow and green. And if we drag a little red in there, you know, that doesn't hurt. It really doesn't. Because if you notice in here, we've got red tones even in the green. So the diagonal here and now a diagonal here. We'll see how that works out. I don't know if it's going to compete, one diagonal compete with the other. I don't know if that's a possibility actually. Or maybe we don't notice this diagonal because it's balanced with the other red elements. I mean, painting is a problem-solving task. And when we learn about shape and color and what it will do when we are painting, we use a lot of mental energy and we challenge ourselves. We really do. We challenge ourselves to become problem solvers. There's a lot going on in a painting that makes it a painting. It makes it a bit challenging to decide and why you decide something. Sometimes it's just out of inspiration. You just put something down in a way that is inspiring or just really spontaneous. Having yellow on one side of my brush and blue on the other and mixing it and seeing how it gives me some nice sort of surprises. Some surprises with the darks and the lights. I'm going to take some of the yellow and the aqua and see what I can do down here. Make a different kind of green. And that might just be what we need in here to give 3 greens, maybe a variety of greens to the composition. You can see as we go over the edge, sometimes we're going to get some bleeding or we'll get some glazing. And we, of course, mixing too much green with the red. If the red is still wet, it'll create mud, or yet it can also create another green, and that can be helpful. I'm using the paint fairly damp and realizing that some of the damp paint's going to mix with what I'm putting on it. I'm going to take a little bit more ultramarine blue and get back in here with some real dark areas to get some nice darks in there. I'm just really having fun and trying to decide just what it is that I want to see. I squint my eyes quite a lot just so that I will see the big shapes and how they're interacting and where I need some balance, another dark or another light. We can go back in with the white and get some lights back if I need to. I like to drag paint color on the brush with the wet paint on the paper. You'll have something a lot different when you work wet compared to working dry. I want it to stay lively, so I use pretty much the strength of the tube of paint, the color from the tube. I'd like to see a little bit more of the blue, I think, to sort of give a balance to that. So it won't be just in one area. So I'm gonna streak some more blue in, and this is the first time I've used white. I'm gonna add a little bit of white to it so we can capture a little bit more of that light. You can see how that sort of reads as light. All right. This painting has taken shape rather quickly, and I like to let some of it dry, but I guess at this point I'm going to take some of the, I don't know if I want to take some of the blue or do I want to take some of the orange. I think I'll take some of the orange and water it down a lot and get a watery consistency, but still stick with that strong orange. And let's drag it in here with some of the damp red, and it will mingle with the damp red, and it's interesting because it will give us that orange tone that will start to develop some dimension in the petals. And it gives some variety. Keeping it mostly here in the focal point, but at the same time, I'm not wanting to leave the background tulips without some of this orange tone, because I feel like it harmonizes to take and put a little bit in the background, even in the areas that are green. We have sort of a, I guess you would say, it's not actually a shadow that's, but it's a reflection somewhat of the warm colors, even appearing in the greens, giving the greens harmony with the reds. Yes, I think I'll take that orange on my brush and put some white with it and actually paint a stem where a stem might be. And being that it's orange, it'll sort of come forward. It's a light orange. I'm going to take and tap a little of that in different areas with the side of my brush, so that again I'm creating light, I'm creating variety of value, I am creating harmony, just touching into the green areas and the yellow areas with this little bit of warm and light shade that's created with the orange and white. All right, I'm taking my time to study a bit and see what it is that I want to see. I'm thinking I have this on my brush, this orange and white, and maybe touching in there in some areas where we have white, we might see color that is representing some of the bright highlights. I want a little bit more of this ultramarine and just taking it and again touching in some of the shaded areas with a mixture that'll help to sort of bring out the shapes that we're seeing in the greenery. All right. I want to see a little more orange and red mixed together, and I want to bring that into this flower that's in the foreground. And sort of bring it forward with some bright orange and get some of the blue in the stem area. I don't know if I like it that dark, so I can go back and put some blue with the white and see what that does. That's an interesting change. If I glaze over that when it's dry, I think I will be happy with it. I'm not exactly sure as to how it's connected to this flower, but there is some looseness, and I don't want to get too picky in this. I guess you could say too picky with precision as to what's a flower and what's the shadow or the stem, but I want to see this simplified a bit right here. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. I like the fact this is pretty plain. We need a little bit of quietness and space, I guess you could say, where your eye can rest. I don't know, I'm thinking I need to see a little bit more of the thicker paint. So I'm taking my red again, and I don't want to go over all of my red, but I'm going to touch a little bit of red here and there and see if I can create another value in the petals. I don't want to detract from the freshness that I created by sort of loosely applying the paint. Well, let's not get too picky. I think we're good to leave it as is. I'm glad that you stuck with me through this demo. I hope that you learned something. I think I did. Stay loose, stay with the big shapes. Take a look at it, hang it up on your wall for a couple of days. If you need a little bit more, you can always go over some areas or change the design a little bit if it's lopsided or whatever. But enjoy the process and paint big, paint loose, paint abstract, have fun, and join me on my next painting demo.